Greetings and welcome. You're tuned into TMH's Daily English News. Our headlines today include Tigray president has urged the world to hold Ethiopian and Eritrean regimes and the Amhara expansionist forces accountable for their crimes that have been committed. Oromo Liberation Army and the Gambela Liberation Front have engaged in regimes in military in Dambidolo, Gambi, and Gambela within the Ethiopian region. Ethiopia's inflation rate reaches a new high in the month of May. As we move on to our main stories for today, President of Government Tigray, Tigray announces his government's readiness to dispatch a fully mandated and briefed high-level delegation to talks and convened and hosted by the government of Kenya. Tigray has sent an open letter to the regional and world leaders, making crystal clear the Tigray government's position regarding peace talks with the federal government of Ethiopia and other Ethiopian parties. Within the letter, Tigray recalled the government of Tigray has, since the outbreak of the war in Ethiopia in November of 2020, been open to good faith peace negotiations convened by an impartial third party, consistent with the norms and principles of the African Union as well as the United Nations. He also added, since the government resumed authority over the major part of Tigray state in June of 2021, it has repeated that call repeatedly. We are prepared to negotiate for peace consistent with fundamental principles of human rights, democracy, and accountability based upon the positions agreed through the deliberation of the government of Tigray, as the president said within the statement. He also added, we are not prepared to make secret deals or bargain away any of our principles for material inducements. Tigray noted that the silence of the African Union over the war and the atrocities perpetrated by the forces ranged against was a betrayal of the foundational principles of what the African Union stands for. He said, in the considered view of the people and the government of Tigray, the leadership of African Union Commission has yet to redeem its failures and restore our trust. He said his government's readiness to go the extra mile for peace must not be misunderstood as a readiness to abandon its principles for weakness or for greed. We received the high representatives of the AU chairperson in Tigray on the basis of the African principles of hospitality, respect for an elder, and respect for the institution of the African Union. Tigray said, adding, however, the proximity of the high representative to the Prime Minister of Ethiopia has not gone unnoticed by our people. Tigray expressed his government's confidence in the government of the United Republic of Tanzania and its appreciation to President Samia Suluhu Hassan for her readiness to support the peace efforts within Ethiopia. He also expressed his government's confidence in the government of Kenya and its appreciation to President Uhuru Kenyatta for his sustained, principled, impartial, inclusive, and discreet efforts to broker peace negotiations with view to comprehensive resolution of the crisis within Ethiopia. Tigray added that the government and the people of Kenya have demonstrated over their years the impartiality, honesty, and solidarity towards Ethiopia and their commitment to the norms and principles of the African Union. The letter underlined, on this basis, we hold firm to the existing agreement among the parties to meet in Nairobi for negotiations hosted and facilitated by the President of Kenya. Tigray welcomed the engagement of international parties and partners in support of this agreed initiative. He says, our position remains that the peace process requires the engagement of the range of international partners under the leadership of the government of Kenya. He mentioned among those parties the United States, the European Union, the United Arab Emirates, the United Nations, and the African Union, all included. Tigray said the position of the government of Tigray still remains unchanged, adding that his government, after all, shall participate in a credible, impartial, and principled peace process that engages with the parties to the conflict in Ethiopia in a serious, inclusive, and considered manner. In related development, Tigray president also urges the international community to hold Ethiopian and Eritrean regimes as well as Amhara expansionist forces accountable for all of the crimes that have been committed. In a letter he wrote to the UN Humanitarian Council, President Federico Villegas Debretsion Gabriel said the invading forces for Ethiopia and Eritrea, along with the Amhara expansionist forces determined to carry out their project of national extermination, have imposed a complete blockade on Tigray, precipitating a colossal humanitarian catastrophe. Referring to the two events in the upcoming historic 50th session of the UN Council Human Rights Commission, the interactive dialogues with the Special Rapporteur on the Human Rights in Eritrea, and the oral briefing by the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia, Debretsion employed that the Council to seriously reflect on the situation within Tigray. He urged the Council to live up to its mandate, prevent human rights violation, and denounce the cruel, inhumane, and degrading conditions to which the people of Tigray have been subjected to over the past 19 months and counting. Referring to the Special Rapporteur's report on Eritrea, Debretsion said the Special Rapporteur has made it clear that the Eritrean army has been a direct participant in the premeditated genocidal war on Tigray ever since the conflict broke out. He added the Eritrean army continues to commit unimaginable atrocities in all areas and under its brutal occupation, violating the core events and tenets of international convention and international humanitarian law. He also noted that the regime has induced the exodus of a large proportion of its citizens and out of Eritrea through its relentless repression, and had made of a habit of recruiting children into armed forces, which is a blatant violation of international law. The president of Tigray echoed the Special Rapporteur's concern that the increased militarization of Eritrea, in particular its indefinite conscription of the population for yet another devastating war, should be addressed before it's far too late. Debretsion criticized the international community for failing to pay adequate attention to the Eritrean regime's domestic repression and habit of exporting its destabilized, repressive brand of authoritarianism across the Horn of Africa, emboldening the regime's ramp up its destabilizing activities. The government of Tigray underscored the international's moral as well as legal an obligation to hold the Eritrean regime accountable for heinous humanitarian law violations that have been committed throughout the entirety of the Tigray region. Ethiopia's Abiy Ahmed says body formed to negotiate with Tigrayan forces. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said on Tuesday, the federal government had formed a committee to negotiate with the Tigrayan forces. Abiy Ahmed told the parliament regarding the peace, a commitment has been established, negotiated, and needs a lot of work. A committee has been established and it will study how we will conduct talks. It's the first time Abiy has made information about the committee public at all. He said Deputy Prime Minister Demeqa Mekonnen was leading the commitment and the committee, which will have 10 to 15 days to work on finer details on what exactly will be negotiated. The war between the national government forces and the allies of the Tigrayan forces has left the economy in shambles and has deterred most of some foreign investors. Oromo Liberation Army is currently engaging the regime's military in Dambidolo and Gembi in Ethiopia's Oromia region. International spokesperson for the Oromo Liberation Army, Oda Taribi, said political prisoners that were held in Dambidolo have been freed. In a related development, the Gambela Liberation Front and the Oromo Liberation Army have undertaken a joint operation in Gambela City. According to Oda Taribi, the joint operation in Gambela has concluded after meeting its objectives. A large amount of weapons and military supplies were captured from weapons depots within the city. He also added that several members of the Gambela Special Forces have defected to join their brethren in the Gambela Liberation Front. The Gambela Liberation Front warned civilians of the town not to come out of their houses to avoid being caught in what is called a crossfire. The front said the operation is carrying out jointly with the Oromo Liberation Army in the capital city of Gambela region and targeting only government security forces as well as the Prosperity Party leaders. The UN says just over 1/3 of the people targeted for aid in Tigray have in fact received food and humanitarian aid. Spokesperson of the UN Secretary General Stéphane Dujarric said between April, when aid delivery by road convoys resumed, and last week, more than 65,000 tons of food aid were delivered within the Tigray region. He, however, indicated that there is in fact a huge gap between what is delivered and what is actually needed and the assistance needed on the ground. Let's take a listen.
Delivered to Tigray, but more assistance is needed to meet all of the needs of the people. Currently, just over 1/3 of people targeted have received food aid in the current round of distribution, which began in October. Fuel supplies also continue to be limited and are impacting food, our ability to get food to people who need it. While food is the
spokesperson reiterated the UN's call for unfettered humanitarian access and aid workers to reach all men and women and children in need across the entirety of northern Ethiopia. Professor Mitaku Haile, who is an emeritus professor, as well as Mark Van Montego, win the laureate of the 2021 World Agriculture Prize. Global Confederation of Higher Education Association for Agriculture and Life Science announced that Professor Mitaku Haile of Mekelle University and Emeritus Professor Mark Van Montego of Ghent University have won the laureates of the 2021 World Agriculture Prize in recognition of their outstanding achievements in agriculture and life science education, as well as scientific research. The awards ceremony will take place on the 21st of June 2022 and will be transmitted virtually from the Nanjing Agricultural University in the People's Republic of China. The ceremony is to be held at 1 p.m. in Nanjing, China on the 21st of June, which will be streamed globally for all viewers to be tuned in. Ethiopia's inflation rate has currently reached an all-time high within this month of May. Ethiopia's inflation rate rose to another record high of 37.2% in May, up from 36.6% in April, and according to the latest data released by Ethiopia's Central Statistical Agency on Saturday, the inflation rate is already the highest in more than a decade in the Eastern African country. The CSA disclosed this inflation and the highest it has ever been due to the rate for food items that has slight increase on 1 percentage point from the previous month, of which was 43.9. And the CSA also said the price of cereals and vegetables showed a slight increase, while the price of wheat, sorghum, and maize showed a slight decline in May. The price of pulses, meat, milk, cheese, eggs, and local cooking oil, non-alcoholic beverages, salt, and pepper have also in fact increased, as the CSA data further disclosed, and the steady increase in the rate of inflation in Ethiopia is happening despite local and federal authorities' efforts to control inflationary pressures through administrative actions. This ongoing conflict in various parts of Ethiopia have in fact largely contributed to this ongoing deterioration of Ethiopia as country in the economy. That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.